In all, 16 people were arrested in the bust around the state. About half of them were arrested right here in northeast Wisconsin.
Bust took down child sex predators and child sex traffickers. 8 people around northeast Wisconsin arrested in this case.
Hemming says some girls enter human trafficking as young as 12 years old, boys as young as 11.
I'm a recovering heroin addict and a survivor of sex trafficking. In high school, I was that all-around American girl. I was in soccer, track, gymnastics, FFA, Model UN in middle school, played violin. You know, I did all of those things that I hear so many parents say today, well, my kid is involved in this, so, you know, that would never happen to them.
It started when I was about 8 years old and ended when I was about 25. It started through very seemingly innocent contact, sexual contact with my cousin. He was saying that this group of people are telling him that he's not a real man if he doesn't have sex.
My drug addiction led me to a lifestyle that I was totally unaware about. I started dancing my senior year of high school, and girls, I knew girls that had pimps, and at that time I don't think I really understood what the term pimp entailed. I didn't even know what human trafficking was.
I was invited to a birthday party. My cousin lives up in Michigan. I live down in Cedarburg, and a new girl had started at our school and who I became friends with. I remembered her being like, that those people wanted me at the birthday party. They had contacted her. I went to the birthday party and I ended up being drugged, bound, gagged, and gang raped. That was the beginning of the traumatic rape experiences that I went through while I was in middle school and high school. He approached me and said, I'm starting this wolf pack, it's a brotherhood, you know, we all look out for each other. I'm gonna set you up on these dates and you're gonna help me and I'm gonna help you and I'm gonna take care of you. And even though I had there was nobody talking about what prostitution is or whatever, like I know if you're making money off of me going on dates, you're talking about a prostitute, right? You know, he never said the word, but I said to him, that's what you're talking about, right? And he's like, that's your word, not mine.
Why some girl would want to be with somebody who was super controlling and give all her money to this guy. Well, several years later, I found that out. I was in a very bad situation with an abuser, somebody who was very abusive, and brand at the back of my leg. Took months to sell me the dream. He promised me that he could keep me safe and that we could make money the easy way. I had no idea what that actually entailed.
Sex trafficking anywhere in the state. Well, I think people generally make the mistake of thinking this is old school prostitution, where someone's made a choice that this is what they want to do to make some money. Or it's frequently in the exotic dancing places, the strip clubs. Oftentimes those are people that are being trafficked. And I think a lot of people have this wrong impression that, well, this is just someone who's found a way to make good money. Whether that was true years ago or not, that's not generally true now.
Human trafficking is the #1 crime in trading a human being for money. Gun running second, and drug dealing is third.
I think people hear it, they're seeing it more on the news now. I don't think they know what it means. So to say, do they think it's happening here? I think it's just a vague thought for people. It's more of those people in that country, and even if they hear that it's happening here in our area, they're thinking more big city or, again, just a certain class of people maybe. They don't really understand what it really looks like in everyday terms.
This is very new, the sex trafficking. It's not new, but it's new in the sense of now it's the feds are involved, Department of Criminal Investigation is involved here in Wisconsin, other agencies are involved. So it's very new in the sense that not a lot of people are doing this, not a lot of people kept stats. So when people ask like, hey, what is this and what is that? We don't know because nobody has done this before. We're kind of writing the book in Northeast Wisconsin. My position is the only one of its kind right now where I'm 100% focused on human trafficking.
The whole issue and topic of sex trafficking, it's like any business. It's economics, really. Supply and demand, right? So you need to have a demand for there to be some sort of supply. And so a lot of times the demand is coming from the suburban area or outside of the inner city and coming into the inner city to buy sex.
But I think Wisconsin just needs to have more awareness of that this is a thing that's happening here. And the vulnerability doesn't look like it doesn't look like the movies, but it's here and it's happening.
I'm aware of investigations throughout the state of Wisconsin that involve victims from Plymouth, Wisconsin, Sheboygan, Wisconsin, West Bend, Milwaukee, big cities, small towns, rich, poor, middle class, all shades of color.
We know what goes on in some of the urban areas such as Milwaukee, Racine, Kenosha, Waukesha, those bigger cities where there's a bigger population. There are more crimes that take place in some of those locations. And unfortunately, we're close to those locations and it tends to draw from there. But just because we're close to the urban areas doesn't mean that it doesn't happen in more of the rural up north counties. Because there's less law enforcement there. There's less people. It's easier to get away with things in certain places like that. So it's all over.
A few years back, there was one individual who was involved in trafficking who had started to work with law enforcement after he was caught and disclosed that it was his impression that Wisconsin was kind of particularly Milwaukee, was kind of the Harvard of human trafficking. And it's an awkward metaphor, but it's a comparison that people are coming here to learn how to do it. We're exporting the skills.
It is a hub, 100%. It actually has been, by the FBI, is pretty much coined the biggest starting area for a pimp, not only in the Midwest, but the United States. So we have guerrilla pimps and Romeo pimps. Guerrilla pimp being the fearmonger who is going to either assault their ladies or strike so much fear in their heart that their family is going to be hurt that they have to stay there. They know no other way. They're feeding them with dope, whether it be heroin, meth, coke, crack, where they have no other option. They can't go back home because they're a runaway or their parents, they don't know where their parents are, or whatever family dynamic. So this guy is their only way out, and if they leave, they're gonna get beat up, hurt, but they're also gonna get dope sick, because now where are they gonna get their dope from? The other one is the lover boy type that's going to buy them gifts, shoes, clothes, jewelry, but obviously in return, you're gonna have to sleep with other males. and that's your payment, is, hey, listen, he charged you 200 bucks, here's 20 bucks, go buy some food. Oh, and what do you want the new Jordans? Okay, I'll get that for you too. So there's two different types, and we see it's a mix really, and they can jump back and forth. A lot of them start off as their boyfriend, girlfriend, quote unquote, and next thing you know, they've turned into a victim. And I mean, they're victims still, but they've turned into a worse victim because now they're getting beaten, abused, sexually assaulted, raped, different things over on this side. But can also flip back too, is if they behave correctly or do the right things, now they've become the bottom or the girlfriend, if you will, of that pimp.
Hearing conversations from former pimps who are now incarcerated and them giving interviews to the detectives that arrested them as a part of like their plea deal, and hearing basically how they recruit and what they look for and how they can pick out the insecurities in someone. Other stories of how these they pose as boyfriends basically, and young people who are in high schools, sometimes as boys, sometimes as girls, who are in schools, and their job is to get to befriend people, learn their different vulnerabilities, and see how they can be exploited.
The vulnerabilities have changed. I think traditionally, talking about trafficking, it was okay, you're a runaway from a major city, and this is where the demand is. And now I live in rural Wisconsin, and I feel like I'm never gonna get out of my little town, and my family doesn't have a lot of money, and all of a sudden I find a boyfriend on Facebook, and he's rich, and he lives in Milwaukee, or he lives in Green Bay or Eau Claire, and he's gonna, take me away for the weekend, and next thing you know, she's not even in the state, or she's in Milwaukee.
The internet is obviously one of those locations that is very difficult for us to track, and it's one of those locations that the bad guys know it's difficult for us to track. So they're going out and they're soliciting their victims there. And they do use sweet talk, and they're con men. And I say men, it could certainly be women as well. But those are difficult for us to track. Traffickers use social media to recruit girls, and so sometimes they pose as different people. It's easier to, you can see different pictures and so forth. You have conversations that no one else really has to see, and so it's another way to access people. And a lot of young people, like, they often friend people or accept friend requests from people like they have no idea, right? Like, if you have this massive friend number on your social media, like, more and more followers, like, the cooler you are. And so that's a huge vulnerability right there.
I think one of the biggest barriers as a parent, and I include myself in on this, is that we didn't grow up with this technology, so we are ignorant to the dangers of it. So we know now, as in our age group, we're using it to put stuff out there and connect with friends and show pictures, and we know how we're using it. And we know that there can be we hear about the bullying and we hear about stuff, but we do not understand the depth and the dangers. Even though we hear it, even though maybe we share that information, but until you see it yourself, how dangerous it is and how vulnerable kids make themselves on their social media accounts, they basically make it as easy as it can possibly be for a predator to lure them in and to groom them, because they give them all the information they need about themselves, all their desires, all their wants, and they put it all out there on social media.
Traffickers prey on people who are vulnerable, and they're remarkably good at hooking people quickly. Oftentimes, the victim is led to believe that this is their boyfriend, or at the very least a friend, and before long they find out that they've been trapped.
The internet is huge. We've run operations where pimps have actually contacted us, not knowing obviously it's us, but contacting the girls and saying, hey, come and work for me, kind of thing. When we ran an operation earlier this year, we arrested a pimp's girl, and he immediately started hitting everybody up, including two of our undercover officers who are online, and said, hey, one of my girls got arrested. Can you help me out? Can you be with me? I'll give you, out of 200 bucks, I'll give you 150 of it, kind of thing. I need to make some money. So they not only contact other girls that are working for somebody or working independently, but the social media is huge. Like I said, with the 14 to the 18-year-old range, how many girls and guys are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever. And it's super scary, these apps that are coming out nowadays where they have unlimited access to all your pictures and everything that you do. You know, Snapchat now even has an app or part of the app where, you can look at a map and see, okay, well, who's on Snapchat within a mile range of me? So, okay, they'll just hit them up, you know, and if it's a girl at the mall or if it's a girl that just fought with her parents, if a girl that's a runaway and they need a house to stay in, that's an easy target for those guys.
We don't realize how serious the social media is in regards to the grooming process of these predators.
They're schmoozers, you know. That's probably the majority of them on the onset. Because obviously if you meet somebody first and you beat them up and throw them in your car, well, you know, that doesn't do you any good. You want to gain their trust. You want to get them to like you. Maybe, you know, hey, now we're boyfriend, girlfriend. And the next thing you know, it turns the corner to, hey, remember those gifts I bought you? Remember that food I bought you? Now you're staying at my house. Okay, well, you're going to have to do some work for it, and you're going to have to sleep with somebody or, you know, 2, 3, 4 guys. And then the ball keeps on getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's all done, or almost all done, through the internet now, through social media type pages, and it's very mobile. The traffickers know to keep their victims moving from one place to another. Don't ever develop connections. Don't let them start to trust anyone or develop a relationship with anyone, because that's all dangerous to the trafficker's operation.
One of the vulnerabilities that pimps and traffickers look for is what does this child believe they are worth? And if they believe that they're worth nothing, that's a huge vulnerability. There's a runaway and a throwaway. So a runaway is basically you know, a young girl or male guy who went away from his house, whether it be he got in a fight with his mom or dad or step parents or whatever the case may be, foster parents, and he or she just ran away for a little while, and the next thing you know, they got caught up in it. A throwaway is they've just been thrown out of the house. Parents aren't looking for them. They don't care. They haven't called the police, haven't notified anybody that they're a runaway. They just, if they show up, they show up. So we see a lot of the girls getting, and the guys too, we've had a couple here in Brown County, but we see a lot of them starting at that age. The youngest victim that we've had in the state of Wisconsin, I think, has been 12 years old. So it's very, but they're vulnerable. They don't know, they don't have the skills to take care of themselves out on the street at 12 to 14, and that's where these guys swoop in and just pick them up, is because they're down on their luck, they need something, and this guy is gonna provide that something, and next thing you know, you're tied in with this group.
Sometimes the trafficked person is addicted to drugs and struggling with that, and this person becomes a source. Sometimes the drugs are introduced after the trafficker ensnares them, but we find that's often a tight connection. That's been one of the things we've been doing at the Department of Justice, is trying to make the connection between the narcotics investigations and human trafficking, and hoping that we're going to be able to make our way into some of the victims through that route.
Drugs are everywhere, and drugs are hand in hand with what goes on with sex trafficking. And we can't just focus on one, we have to focus on both of them if we're going to affect any change.
If you're dealing drugs, you're dealing girls, and vice versa. The thing with dealing girls, or pimping them out per se, is I can sell a bag of heroin one time to that person. I can sell this girl 10 times a night. So where are you going to make your money? You're going to make your money on the girls. Now if they're dope dependent, and you're a strong arm guy, and you're the type of gorilla pimp that basically beats your girls, they're gonna stay there because they're fearful of you. They're fearful that they're gonna get killed or their family's gonna get hurt, so they're gonna have to stay in that house. So you can sell that girl 8, 10, 12 times a night for 100, 200 bucks, and you're gonna make way more money than what you would have just made on this little baggie of dope. So they're definitely intertwined. Here in Brown County, we have a multi-jurisdictional drug task force. I'm in contact with them daily, if not multiple times a day. And we're exchanging names, we're exchanging info all the time.
Human trafficking wouldn't exist if there weren't someone willing to pay for it. And we're finding out from so many victims, and often we don't make contact with these survivors until they're adults. But so often when they tell us about the history of how this started for them, they started as young as 12 and 13. Someone was paying to have sex with them when they were 12 or 13 or 14 or 15. That's inexcusable. And we're going to continue to go after those characters. You're creating the demand for this, and it would dry up if people stopped paying for it.
In 2015, the average age for a girl to be pulled into this or caught up in this life was 12 to 14. 12 to 14. That was in 2015. The updated version in 2017 is 9 to 14. So I mean, even those charts, everything, including the demand, is showing that it is getting younger. So we reach out to men to understand this. This isn't about guilt. It's not about shame. It's about saying, holy cow, I didn't know this. I'm going to change. If you're visiting strip clubs, you need to understand that there's a reason that those are not a healthy environment. So stop supporting that, because there are girls being trafficked through strip clubs.
So John is essentially a buyer of sex trafficking victims. Now, our average John would be a middle-aged white male, college-educated, married with children. There's obviously the gamut of Johns. We've seen Johns as young as 18, 19, almost basically engaged to get married, or just starting their lives in college, all the way up to the 65-year-old that has never been married, doesn't have any kids. So really it can run the gamut. However, our middle of the road median would be a college-educated white male, right around the age of 35 to 45 years of age.
One of the things that the founder of Polaris talked about was a study that's going to come out later on this summer, maybe early fall, in looking at the sex buying habits of men. And the number he used, and it's not the final number, but it's in the ballpark, that 35% of men, there's nothing that would get in their way of going to purchase sex. And this is actually paying for sexual favors from a human being. This is not even a man purchasing porn online. In the 65%, I don't remember the exact numbers, but some of the men, they entertain the idea, but they're fearful of getting caught. So there's a significant percentage of men, and I'm going to say it's probably a conservative number, that they toy with this idea a lot.
The way that we're doing it now is the Johns aren't getting a ticket. They're actually getting taken to jail for a short period of time. Their cell phone is being confiscated, and then they actually have to appear in front of a judge. So, I mean, if you're married with kids and you get caught up in one of our operations and your face is on the, Facebook or whatever, you don't really want that to happen again. So we're not seeing a whole lot of repeaters since the beginning of the year, since we've started this, because I think they're probably starting to pick up on that, okay, well, once was on the news was enough for me. I don't want to get my family embarrassed again. So
demand is getting bigger for younger aged girls, victims, boys. So that demand is being filled. So the strip clubs, it's all part of the product. The movies, the girls are getting younger. The strip clubs, their demand is for younger dancers. Viewing it online, any of that.
It's kind of like that saying, like, once you know about it, you can't ignore it kind of thing. And so I think awareness is just so important. And if we could just get everyone just to have that little piece in their ear, like, this is happening, and even for them to say it to their friend and to say it to their friend, just raise that awareness, because as awareness is being raised, demand is going to be, that supply and demand chain is going to be broken, which I think is so important, because if there was no demand, there'd be no supply.
It's serious here. Because of that, we wanted to do something, we wanted to focus more direct attention on it. So we created a Human Trafficking Bureau at the Department of Justice Division of Criminal Investigation with a special agent in charge of that division and 6 agents who focus on doing this work. Now we're not gonna do all the work. What happens is we're working to coordinate better strategies statewide with other local law enforcement agencies. We're doing training, we're providing resources when we can.
I do wholeheartedly support the Attorney General's efforts to raise attention and to educate law enforcement. What I hope is that that educational effort by those 7 agents that are hired is culturally informed, is trauma informed, and involves all of the others of us doing the work on the ground in the community who see all the downstream consequences that could inform law enforcement's response on the front end.
Recently we've been trained to team up with the Cook County Sheriff's Office on the National John Suppression Initiative. Basically, years ago it was seen as, sex trafficking, or not sex trafficking, but prostitution was seen as taboo, and it was the girls that were the issue. So it was ticket the girls, take them to jail, but we saw all that really did was it forced them back out onto the track or the streets or the hotels, because if you gave them a $1,000 ticket, what are they going to have to do? They're going to have to go get more dates to pay for that ticket and or sit in jail for that. So over time we've realized that doesn't really work. So now we've moved on to what we call demand suppression, and that's where the NJSI, which is the National John Suppression Initiative, comes into play. And we're actually targeting the Johns in the sense of if we don't have the buyers of sex trafficking, then we don't necessarily have the problem of sex trafficking.
It's not a matter of just arresting our way out, although there are people we need to arrest. There's also going to have to be the service to the survivors aspect. There's going to have to be the public awareness and prevention campaign. All of those things, law enforcement, treatment, prevention and awareness, all those pieces have to be working together if we're going to solve this. It has to become something that citizens in Wisconsin understand is a scourge, that it's modern day slavery, that this isn't harmless. It's not someone who's doing something out of their own free will to make money.
Kids are being sold for sex, really. Kids are being exploited all throughout this country, and we want to do our part to end child sexual exploitation here in the greater Milwaukee area.
Shifting the perspective to there's a lot more under the surface that we don't ever get to see and we don't talk about, and it's coercion and it's abuse and it's emotional abuse and physical abuse and threats and all of these things. And there's always that element of sexual abuse and sexual violence, and we just don't talk about that. And so now that we're starting to see like, oh, there's a lot more to this, we're kind of identifying these victims and survivors as, okay, let's talk about how you got here. Let's talk about all of those things that you had to go through and all of this trauma that you had to go through. How did you get here?
It's going to take a gentle touch to convince a trafficking victim to work with us, to come to us, to trust us, and to know that we're in this for the long haul with them. And that's all part of the training for law enforcement. And we've worked very hard to try to coordinate the resources statewide, because we know that if we expect a survivor of human trafficking to trust us and to work with us to get them back to safety again and go after the trafficker, we know that this isn't just giving them someplace to go tonight or this weekend or the next week, that this is going to be a relationship that's going to go for 6 months or a year or maybe longer, where we're going to have to get them back to being a productive citizen again. You have to kind of deprogram them. They have been living in fear and under threat and coercion for so long that they can't just snap their fingers and be all fine. And so we have to commit that we're going to be with them for the long haul.
I've watched survivors, and it's a struggle to live every day. They challenge themselves to live another day. And sometimes they can go for many weeks without having to do that. Suddenly something triggers them and they're questioning whether it's worth living.
The really tough parts about my story, even at this age, as old as I am, 37, is still the effects that it had on my family. You know, people who are around me, I think that's another question that people always ask is, how come nobody noticed? If all of this is going on and you're saying that people are around you, how come nobody noticed? Well, they noticed it, but they perceived it differently. Just the way that I noticed it, but I perceived it differently. Trafficking is a legal term. It's not a life term. You know, it's not how life actually happens. I don't know that you ever fully get out of it. Particularly when all of these people they're not in jail. I mean, they're roaming the earth freely. They can access me really whenever they want. But I do feel like I have opportunities to, at the very least, even if they do come kill me, like they say they're going to, at least there's people in the community who are listening and who know what's happening. And even if they kill me, at least the truth is real to people.
Whenever I speak, I do an exercise with everybody, and I tell everybody to close their eyes and say, picture a prostitute or a junkie, a crackhead, a crack whore. And then I tell everybody to open their eyes and stand in front of them and say, that image that we have come to embrace, that's me. Sex trafficking and addiction are not just inner city problems. They are suburban problems. You know, our society has become okay with locking away drug dealers and arms dealers, but yet we keep wanting to turn a blind eye to people selling humans over and over, because the reality is, once the drugs are gone, you can't resell them, and you can do that with a human. I want people to be aware, I want people to be educated, I want people to know that this is not an inner city problem. This is an everywhere problem. This is a suburban problem, especially with the heroin epidemic sweeping over our cities and youth starting with prescription painkillers. I want people to start the conversation.
Look for the clothing. Look for, are you in a convenience store and you have a girl and guy together and the girl is just like walking behind the guy, not talking to anybody, head down, looks scared, looks nervous, and then the guy is making all the decisions of, you know, and yeah, obviously, you know, we all know that as a couple, if you go into the gas station or something, the guy's, well, old school is the guy's supposed to pay and whatnot, so we're not saying that, but look at her demeanor. Does she have bruises? Does she have a black eye? Is she walking behind this guy, you know, just not looking at anybody, not paying attention to anybody? And, you know, if you bump into her, if you say hello or something and she just looks down and doesn't talk to you, that's because she doesn't have permission to talk to you. That's how these power and control pimps work, is they don't want you looking at somebody, talking to anybody.
You can look for the girl who is walking in the mall with her friends, maybe a couple steps back from everybody, keeping her head down. You can look for the victim who is with an older man or older boyfriend.
Befriending them, hanging out with me, I'll take care of you, I'll give you rides, let me buy you some stuff, and they just, that trusted adult. And so it's like just understanding what it looks like is really that and protecting those young kids, you know.
It's important for people to pay attention to what's going on around them, not just for this, but for all crimes. Pay attention to suspicious vehicles. Pay attention to suspicious people. Why are they in the neighborhood? Are they normally in the neighborhood? Are they frequenting that maybe certain times of day, certain times of the week? Is it unusual? Those are things that we want to know. Those are the things that if it looks weird to you and out of place, then it is.
For parents, I want to say, get to know your kids. Be friends with your kids, and of course there's a fine line between being a friend and being a parent, but if you don't know your child and their habits, how are you supposed to know when something is different, when something is off or not right? So first and foremost, know your child so you can know when their habits start to change, when their behaviors start to change.
Be a parent, that's it. I mean, that's what is going to stop young girls and boys from getting into this, is you making sure that you are keeping tabs on your kids and knowing what they're doing, knowing who they're talking to.
Freedom is coming. Like, if you're in that life still, like, we're working so hard to do what we do, and also collaborate with law enforcement, collaborate with state level government and so forth to bring about change in legislation, to bring about just awareness within law enforcement, and just continue to grow the conversation of what can be done. It's like dominoes, like every piece affects each other, and we're all needed.
No matter what they get you to do, no matter what they get you to try, they cannot fundamentally change who you are. They can change a lot about you, sometimes to the point where you don't even feel like you're recognizable to yourself. Honestly, there were years where I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. Like, it's just, you do such weird things as the effects of trauma set in, but you're still there. You are still there. It's not, when you get to find people who understand the situation and you really get to start to explain what happened to you.
Not to embrace what we hear in the media or in songs or see on movies, but to get the conversation started, to break the stigma of what a victim could look like, to end the misconceptions of what trafficking really is and really entails, because it really is modern day slavery, and it is going to take a village to make a difference, but it can really start with just one person.